Hi, Nicole.
Hey, Chris.
How are you?
I am good.
Welcome to another week of The Wire. For those of you who have not joined us before, Nicole and I spend times talking about different real estate related wire fraud scams that are happening in the space and all types of fraud that's happening to real estate professionals, to clients, to our communities. And we're trying to put information out there that can keep people safe. So whether you're a real estate professional listening to this and how this may be able to bring some value to you and your business or your clients, or you're buying your first home or selling a home, we talk about all the things to be aware of so you cannot be a victim of what is happening out there. So welcome.
Thanks. Thanks. I'm excited to do this today. We have some really good stuff we're going to talk about today.
So let's jump in. Nicole, what are we going to talk about today?
So we know that real estate in the past year and a half has taken a much deeper tech dive than it has historically, just with COVID and having to move to electronic resources, really. And with that, we've seen a lot more hacking going on, if you will. And so today, what we're going to talk about are different types of malware that occur on your computer. And we're also going to talk about what happens if you accidentally click on a spam link. What do you do to save your system and your email and everything that you have? And then last, we'll talk about what do you do when your email is hacked? I mean, these are basic steps that you need to take when you accidentally click on a wrong link, whether it's on a site or if it's through an email that you receive.
Yeah, we're all human, right? So we sometimes get tricked by a shiny bell and whistle and we click on something, or we're excited to get something and we click on it or put our information into it and have gotten ahead of ourselves. And for those that aren't familiar with malware is basically just short for malicious software. So any type of software that is targeting you to do nefarious things. So whether that's phishing software or spyware or ransomware, anything that malware kind of covers all of the different software intrusions that folks are trying to do.
Yes.
So what do you want to talk about first, Nicole?
Well, we're going to talk about three different ones today that I think are the most important, and maybe they aren't the most important, but I think they are. Okay. We'll talk about spyware. We'll talk about ransomware. And then Keyloggers is another one that I think is really important to understand. I don't know if many people really understand how that one works.
Yeah.
But first, let's talk about spyware. So say you click on a link and you all of a sudden have spyware on your computer. What does that do to you? Well, it invades your computer and it takes your personal information, whether you have credit card information or banking information, passwords to various accounts, any web browsing data, anything that you have been doing on your computer. It can take that information and pull it in so that that hacker knows what you do on a regular basis, what your habits are, and they can use those against you.
Yeah. And, when you're talking about spyware specifically, normally what happens is you're actually physically downloading software onto your computer. And most of the time that's happening unwittingly, like you're not aware that, you've clicked on something and now it's trying to install a file onto your machine. And that file is an application that's going to run in the background, and it's going to monitor everything you're doing. It's going to monitor the websites you're going to, how you interact and how you work on your machine. There was a title company a few years back that there was an employee who had downloaded some spyware onto her machine, and she was someone at the title company who handed the money. So the wiring of money. So if you are buying or selling a home and you get a loan, that loan is money that's used to go through the title company. It's sent to the title company, and they take that money and they send it to a seller, or they send it to pay off a bank or whatever. So this person in the title company was in charge of wires and monies, and had downloaded some spyware, wasn't aware of it, and they had just been watching her machine and how she works and what she does. And so one of the things that she did was she had a bookmark on her web browser, on her her internet browser, and she would click on that shortcut link and it would take her to the bank that she would use to wire monies. So she'd click on it, would take her to the bank website. She'd put in her user information, and then, she would be in there, and that's where she would go to send funds. So the fraudsters in this case, or hackers, were watching what she did, how she behaved on her machine. They went in and they created a website that looked just like her bank's website. It was almost to the T of what her bank website looked like. They changed the obviously they didn't use the same URL. They had a different URL. But what they did was they took that URL and they switched out her shortcut in her browser. And so when she clicked on that, and the next day when she clicked on that link, and it took her to the fake bank website that looked just like hers, and she was getting ready to wire close to $2 million in proceeds that day. So she goes to wire the money out, clicks on that link, takes her to the fake website, starts putting in the information to the bank login, and gets an error message. Error message comes up, says, we were having a technical difficulty. So they're monitoring, because with spyware you can monitor what somebody's doing on their machine, hence the name spyware. They're spying on what she's doing, and while that error message is coming up, her phone rings, and on the caller ID it shows up with the bank. They spoofed the phone so it would show up with the bank's name on the phone, on the caller ID. And it's someone from supposedly the bank saying, "We see that you're trying to log into your account. Here, let us help you. We're having technical problems." They walk her through transferring of close to $2 million to a fraudulent account.
So it went through.
My understanding is they got back partial monies. It did go through.
Wow. Partial of almost 2 million is a lot of money.
Yeah, there was, and when that happens, it takes a couple of days for the dust to settle to realize that money didn't get to where it's going, especially when you're dealing with things like wires, which often aren't the most transparent thing, knowing when a wire is actually hit or when it's supposed to hit or that sort of thing. So by the time the dust settled, not all of the money was caught, but that's something. So for business owners, having the right, whether it's antivirus software or systems in place to prevent employees who may just be having a bad day from clicking on something they shouldn't, and not necessarily thinking they're doing anything wrong, but that kind of stuff happens. The other thing with stuff like this is often a lot of this software are written for PCs versus Macs. There's something like 20 plus million different malware software written for PCs. And there's, 200 some thousand written for Apple's operating system. So
that's a big difference.
It's a huge difference. And so what will happen is, let's say if I'm on a Mac and I download something that's trying to install an application on my computer, often that's going to be in an exe file, which would install on a Windows machine, but that's not going to install on a Apple operating system. So it's just not going to work. So that's something to be considering when you're thinking about these different processes and systems and computers you're going to put into your offices or what you're going to use for personal use. There are certainly antivirus softwares, but those things all have to be kept up to date. There's usually cost involved with those for PCs. So they are important, but they come with a different whole other set of complications potentially.
Well, it makes sense that they write them for PCs also, because most large corporations tend to use PCs across the country. I mean, they do.
Yeah. And most computers are PCs. So I don't know what Apple's market share is anymore, but I mean, maybe it's 10%, 10 to 20%. And for a long time, it was 5% or less. and the PC market dominated. So that's the other reason is the market opportunity for someone trying to steal funds is just significantly higher. And as you said, a lot of businesses are PC based.
Right. So it makes sense. Let's talk about the next one. The next one is ransomware. And there have been a lot of ransomware attacks recently in the news. And so I don't know if people really know what that is. They just say ransomware, cybercrime. But to really understand what it is if someone downloads ransomware accidentally into your company, or just into your own computer, it's designed to encrypt your files and lock them up until you pay a ransom. So when they go after large corporations or even individuals, they're looking to make money. And often, like we just saw recently in the CloudStar attack, this is what happened, right? Like this is what's happening, and the payouts are going on, and so they're finding it lucrative. So they're going to continue to keep going after sending these attacks over.
Well, yeah, and you're seeing, so like anything, all of these different types of fraud have nuance to them, and they have different levels of technical expertise depending upon what type of crimes they're trying to commit, and usually based on the size of the targets. So for something like a ransomware is a bit more of a complex type of software fraud versus like a phishing email, right? Phishing email is on a scale of 1 to 10, a phishing email is a 2, and a ransomware attack could be a 8, 9, or 10, right? Depending on the level of sophistication. So typically with ransomware attacks, you're dealing with, Eastern European, Russian backed fraudsters, whereas like a phishing scam or phishing email, you're dealing with more of a Indian, Pakistani developers working with West African fraudsters. So there's nuance to different things, and I only say that just to understand the nuance and the complexity to different types of fraud. So what we're seeing with ransomware attacks, and that has folks most concerned, is that it's no longer just about attacking a business. If you attack a business, you're going to inconvenience that business, and the ransomware attack hackers may get paid, they may not. Because their whole thing is about getting paid, right? This is all that drives all of this, is how do I get paid? And so now what you're seeing is that they're targeting infrastructure. So whether it's infrastructure at like a government level, so water systems, electric systems, or infrastructure in a technology level with cloud-based companies who other businesses are using their services to host their software, to host their files. If now you have hit a cloud-based company that is offering cloud services to 10,000 different companies, you've now compromised the production of those 10,000 businesses, not just that one company who's offering infrastructure. And so that's where what you're seeing is they're going after the infrastructure because it creates a ton more leverage for them to get paid.
Yeah, I mean, they're at risk of losing their current clients and any future clients, and it will put a company under.
Yeah, and the amount of pressure. I mean, imagine your clients are calling you every day freaking out because you've negatively impacted their ability to do their work and their livelihoods. So they're going to do everything in their ability to get paid and get everything turned back on. And so that's why you're seeing what you're seeing. And so, normally this stuff is not easy to get resolved. And it usually, there's reasons that folks have insurance policies to pay out on these things if and when they do occur. Normally what's going to happen is you're going to end up paying out on these with your insurance claim, and a lot of these insurance policies include monies to rebrand your business because that brand is dead.
It's interesting. I talked to a title company recently, and they had been they had been involved with the CloudStar attack, and they said that they were still trying to figure out names of files and they had agents reaching out to them and saying, hey, when's the closing happening for this? And because they had lost all that information, they were scrambling through their email, trying to find these orders and push them through as fast as possible. At that point, they said that there still was no determined time for them to be back up and running, but it had already cost that business individually, out of all the businesses they host, it cost that one alone 10 grand at that point. And this was 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yep.
And it's not, and that's just one company. And you don't know, depending on the size of the different companies out there, you don't really know what it's costing people.
Yeah. And so, do the math. So if you have 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 customers and it's impacting each of them tens of thousands of dollars, that's a lot of pressure to get back online. So that's why they're doing it. And that's, versus if you just shut down one company and ransom that one company, well, maybe they'll pay you off, but maybe they'll go out of business. Maybe they'll just figure out another way to not use those files anymore. So, that's why they're doing it the way they're doing it.
It's a huge disruption.
Yeah. And imagine if you're a government, or imagine if you're a utility company that they're ransoming the ability to turn water on for a city.
Right.
That's a lot of leverage. And again, this is about how do you get paid?
And I think we're just seeing the beginning of this happening. I think it's going to happen a lot more often and more frequently as well. We've seen a few attacks recently just this year, but I think we're going to see a lot more coming down.
Well, it's like any type of crime, right? Like the criminal only has to be right once, right? But the good guy has to be right every time. So that's just the nature of crime. And so now we're moving into a different phase where technology allows for these things to happen more and more. But it also allows us to create better solutions as well.
Yeah, it does. Let's talk about the last one. So the last one I want to talk about is Keyloggers. And this is really interesting because if you click on the wrong link, these people have access to every single stroke on your keyboard, and then they record them on a log. And what they do is they use that information to gain access to unauthorized access to your accounts, whether that's email, some type of software system, CRM, whatever they want access to. If you're logging into your own bank account, they can get access to that. It's scary what they have access to with something like that, with Keyloggers. That's crazy. That's very scary. So you're not just like clicking on a link and entering it in through a phishing email. They're actually just watching every move.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild.
No thanks. Oh my God. So let's talk about what you do. So if you click on a spam link, what do you do? The first thing you do is you disconnect your device and you take it off the internet completely. It prevents any potential malware spreading to other devices that may be connected to the network. So that's the most important thing you can do first. It kind of stalls it right then and there.
Now, I think, does this mean that anytime you click on a link that you shouldn't have clicked on, you have to take your computer offline and run scans or take it somewhere? Maybe not. I don't know. I think I would be most concerned if I saw that there was an application running that was downloaded or maybe running in the background. You can pull up and see what applications are running. And if something like that is running on your machine, should show up when you pull that sort of thing up. So if there's something running that you don't know what it is and you searched and you can't figure it out, and you definitely feel that you've been compromised, then by all means, it's better to be safe than sorry.
So will they always show if you look to see what's running on your machine? Will something like that always show?
I don't know. I think so, but I don't know. It's hard to say anymore what there's no black and white yes and no answers to as much as there was. I think in the past, yes, but I'm not sure. And again, I'm not sure from a PC standpoint. You're talking really, this is more of like a PC, something that's happening on PCs more frequently than it would be happening on a Linux machine or a Mac. So I'm not sure. I think keeping your antivirus software, if you're on a PC, up to date and making sure that that's properly doing the scans that are necessary to make sure that those things aren't, because that's their business. Their business is to be out there and updating these operating systems every day, scouring the internet of where the holes are in the security of your computers. So that's what they do, and that's what they're good at, and that's where to go to find some of those answers.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely important to have antivirus software on your computer, and there's different ones out there. So people need to find which one works best for them. We're not here to promote anything, just promote getting it.
Yeah. Right? Just be protected.
Yeah, definitely scan your system. The other one is backing up your files. So when you're recovering from some type of cyber attack, some of your data may be erased or corrupted. So it's really important to save anything essential on an external drive at any time, and do this on a regular basis. There's so many cool programs out there where you can just have an external drive connected and set it up once a day where it just says, hey, any new changes, please save to the external drive, and do it once a day. It's automated. I mean,
now you can even do it over your Wi-Fi. So you could actually connect that external drive to your Wi-Fi, and it will just, when your computer is hooked up to your Wi-Fi, it will update or back up over the Wi-Fi automatically, and so you don't even have to physically attach it anymore. So you can automate all of that.
Right. And then the last one, if you click on a bad link, change all your passwords. And honestly, it goes back to us also saying like, hey, use a password manager. I mean, that is really so important. And changing your password in those is super easy. You just go in there and you can have them generate a new encrypted password for you. And it simplifies the process so much.
Yeah. And password managers are good too, because they're also scrubbing the dark web for your information. So if your information has been compromised somewhere, and what happens is your information can get leaked out onto the dark web, and then folks basically buy and sell that information like it's a commodity. And so that when those accounts become compromised, that email address, password, or compromised, it'll tell you, it'll be scouring the dark web to let you know, that notify you that, hey, this is compromised, you need to change it, and you shouldn't use this password again, or you shouldn't use it anywhere else. So there are additional bonuses to having having password managers set up.
Agreed. Okay, so we click on a spam link, the 4 steps: disconnect your device, back up those crucial files, scan your system, and change your passwords. Let's move on to the last section. So what do you do when your email has been hacked? And we know this is the primary way that wire fraud is happening in real estate. So this is a big one. Take notes, listen in, maybe implement some of this stuff today, because you don't know. Maybe you've been hacked already and you don't know. I don't know. This is important. So the first thing, again, change your password and check your account settings. So first of all, on everything, you should always have 2-factor authentication set up. We say this over and over. We're like a broken record. If you haven't done it yet, pause this podcast, turn on 2-factor authentication, and then push play and get back on. We need you to do this. This is so important.
Yeah. I mean, at this point in the game, and especially if you're a professional and you're listening to this, if you do not have 2-factor authentication turned on and the email that you're using for business and for work, then I would argue that that's negligence. And so, there's no excuse for not having it done. Ignorance is not a legal defense. You are no longer ignorant. If you're listening to this, turn it on. If you're a consumer, same thing. You're as much of a target as anyone else. So could it be inconvenient? Possibly. Is it something new? Possibly. Could it be annoying? Possibly. Tough. This is the world we live in. It needs to be turned on. If
you don't do it and you're found liable, it could cost you a lot more than that 5 minutes it took to turn on.
Yep.
It could be a huge financial burden to you. Huge. So turn on 2-factor authentication, change your password. That way, if anyone is actually in your email and you set up the 2-factor first, then you change your password, it boots people out. And then if you have 2-factor set up, they can't get back in because they don't have your secret code. It's very simple. It keeps your email clean. Let's see, what else? Check your bank account transactions on a regular basis. Make sure that nothing's going on. If someone has your login information, they're going to probably go after your bank account first. So if you see transactions that you are not familiar with, I would talk to your bank first. Definitely change your password. Make sure 2-factor set up on your bank account as well. It's probably one of the most important places to have it set up. I mean, anything financial, I would have it set up on. I have it set up everywhere.
Yeah, and most banks now require, they don't let you access your stuff without having it, and so as it should be. So, listen, if this helps protect, keeps you 99% safe in most situations, then it's worth doing. It's just not this is the last thing you want to have happen to you or your business or your clients. And so we really can't harp on this enough. If you're not doing this, you really need to take a hard look at your business.
Right. Like, are you going to take it seriously?
If you're not doing this, then what else aren't you doing?
I agree. If you think your email's been compromised, it might be a good idea to send an email to any of your contacts and let them know that your email has been hacked, and maybe just to hold off on following any instructions. I
don't know that I feel good about that one. I think that I know that was suggested in the article that you're pulling from, but I think unless you know for a fact that you are compromised and somebody is pretending to be you, I don't think it's a good look to be out there telling people that you may or may not be compromised. I think getting your stuff in order, meaning stronger passwords, 2-factor authentication, making sure that your accounts are, I don't know. I think that you have to be really sensitive to how that looks, especially if you're a professional, how that looks to your business.
I agree. I know where you're going with that. I think that I agree with that. I think that in a lot of cases it might be applicable, but when it comes to real estate, if you button up your email immediately and you just make sure your clients know that anything that includes sensitive information, they call you directly and verify it with you, that's the most important thing you can do, and make sure they do it every time. Because again, like even if your even if it's been hacked and you switch out the password, that hacker can still spoof your email. Sure. And make it look the same. So at that point, it doesn't matter. So just make sure they verify.
Now, if you have been compromised and, maybe even have lost monies or like what happened with CloudStar, like that's different, right? Now that my suggestion is you be overly transparent around what happened, how it happened, what you know, what you don't know, what's potentially compromised, what isn't. So those types of things you have to be overly communicative about. You can't, none of us have the right to compromise others if we know that we've been a victim of things. So it doesn't mean you have to broadcast it, but it does mean that if they're going to use that information to defraud someone else, then that or affect somebody else's business negatively or their livelihood negatively, I think the right thing to do is to be overly communicative.
I agree. I think it helps maintain some integrity, even though integrity's been lost in a situation like that a little bit. It's scary. It's a balancing act on how you handle it. And I would say that I would watch different accounts. Like we said, watch your bank account transactions, watch credit card accounts, watch other accounts as well, and make sure that you don't see anything going on that you have not initiated. And run a scan on your system. Backups and scans and 2-factor authentication.
Oh my.
But once you set this stuff up, it's not terribly complicated. It's automated for you. That's the cool thing, is that while technology can seem daunting, you can also automate so many of these processes to protect you and really just keep your business safe.
Yeah, none of this stuff is hard. This is all a YouTube video away from figuring out. Like none of this is rocket science, and it's certainly easier than being a victim of fraud.
Right. So when you're scrolling on Facebook this evening and looking at pictures of your friends' vacations that you're envious of, and first day of school pictures, stop what you're doing and just implement a few of these. Do one at a time. Do one a day instead of judging people's Facebook threads. Although that's fun too. Could be therapeutic, I suppose. But this is better for your business.
I think you may be moving into the point of the conversation where you begin projecting.
I'm not projecting, except that I was jealous of your trip.
I think you're projecting a bit. Thou doth protest too much.
Oh, it's fine. I post first day of school pictures. It's all good.
All right. Well, anything else you wanted to cover today, Nicole?
No, I think that pretty much wraps it up. Button up your business.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining us this week again on The Wire. And for those fraudsters who have been reaching out to us through our website, we see you. We appreciate your viewership. What's wrong, Nicole? Why are you looking at me like that? Just kidding.
Yep.
All right. Check us out next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.